Okay, welcome back. We finished up talking last week about the three main financial statements that you need to know for this class. Again, this is just our review of accounting. And then at the very end, we'll talk about how we incorporate that into the financial decision making. But at the end of last week, we began to talk about the balance sheet. Right? And again, here's a simple balance sheet. Approximately what I need you to be able to recreate on an exam or a homework would be just the stuff that's in bold here. Assets over on the right-hand side, left-hand side, liabilities and owner's equity on the right-hand side. We talked about some of the things that are important for the balance sheet, and we left off talking about liquidity, right? Where liquidity is the ability to convert an asset into cash quickly without a significant loss in value. We talked about how assets and all items on the balance sheet, so assets and liabilities, are listed in order of liquidity. And that liquidity is extremely important in terms of financial decision making, because liquidity is about how much financial flexibility managers have on hand in order to, say, operate the business, make new investments, prepare for a rainy day, make sure that if anything goes wrong, they still have enough funds to pay all the salaries and all the bills and keep all the lights on. Right. On the other hand, the trade-off between liquidity and illiquidity, so non-liquid assets, is that the most liquid assets, like cash, they don't earn any return. They don't make any financial money. Right. So if you have cash stuffed under your mattress, you pull it back out a year later, that $20 you stuffed under your mattress is still just $20 today. And so that means that a firm can't be engaged in the business of only holding liquid assets, because that firm then isn't going to make any money. The firm has to have a trade-off between liquid assets and illiquid assets, and has to manage that trade-off on a day-to-day basis and with some foresight for the future as much as you can, so that the firm is simultaneously invested in operating illiquid assets in order to generate profit, and having some kind of liquidity on the balance sheet in order to maintain some financial flexibility and avoid situations of financial distress. Okay. The next thing that we as financial managers care about out of the balance sheet is something called net working capital, where net working capital is equal to current assets minus current liabilities. Okay. Now, net working capital is a financial measure that relates in a short-term basis, something that's very important to the financial team. And that is how much we are owed versus how much we owe on a short-term basis. So if we flip back to the balance sheet, we can see that current assets are cash, accounts receivable, and inventory. Right? So cash is the money in our savings account. Accounts receivable is money that we are owed. We have sold product on credit, and our retailers, whoever is selling our product for us, is owing us money. That's usually 30 to 60 days. That's got to be converted. And then inventory is product that we haven't sold yet at all. Current liabilities is accounts payable. This is money that we owe on a short-term basis. So we have bought supplies on credit, and then we owe that money back to our suppliers in 30 to 60 days. Notes payable are short-term loans, 6 months to a year from a bank. You can think of notes payable kind of like a firm's credit card, right? These are really relatively small short-term loans, often used to make payroll and stuff, to smooth out a firm's cash flow in case one month they have a really good month and one month they have a really bad month. They can use notes payable as a credit card to pay all their expenses every month, regardless of whether they have fluctuating revenues. Okay? And then accrued expenses we don't really have to worry about. It's a little more complicated than we need for this class. But essentially what net working capital says is that if our net working capital is greater than 1, then our current assets outweigh our current liabilities. So the firm is financially healthy if on a short-term basis it has enough cash and accounts receivable and inventory to cover all the money that it might owe on its notes payable or on its accounts payable. Okay. And so this is a day-to-day operations thing. We're using these short-term items on the balance sheet to make sure that the firm doesn't get any financial trouble, that its bills get paid, that its employees get paid, and that everything is above board. And so A financial manager cares about net working capital because this is one of their primary jobs, is to make sure and manage the firm's cash flow so that the firm never experiences any distress, the firm never has any unpaid bills, the firm makes sure that its notes payable are paid, its accounts payable are paid, its accounts receivables are collected. All of those things fall under the purview of the financial manager. And broadly speaking, play into this idea that cash flow and cash flow management is a fundamental job of the financial team. Okay? So we'll work a quick networking capital example. Hopefully this isn't totally new to you, but we'll jump to a quick example and then come back. The next thing that we want to be aware of and consider from the balance sheet is something called the capital structure of the firm. And in finance and economics, capital simply means money. So capital structure is the structure of the firm's money. And the way we can think about that is this is the structure of how the firm has raised all the money that it then used to buy all the assets on the other side. So very specifically, we can think about this as the choice between equity, which is selling shares, debt, which is taking out loans, or neither, which is the firm's savings account, rating what we call retained earnings and the cash account. And so the capital structure, and if we flip back here, you can see that the right-hand side with liabilities and owner's equity, the capital structure of the firm is how we raise all of the funding that we then use to buy all the fixed assets, the property, the plant, that we then use to buy all the supplies, that we use to make our inventories, and that we use to sell our accounts receivable, right? So the firm, and this is sort of, this is defined by the balance sheet identity in some way, or maybe a better way to say it is this is why the balance sheet identity has to be true, right? That the firm raises capital and then uses that capital in order to operate, okay? And you can see that it's split up here. Owner's equity, stockholders' equity, this is raising money by selling shares of the firm, and then the liabilities means that we're raising money by issuing debt or raising debt, which is loans from the firm. And then you can see retained earnings down there, accumulated retained earnings. This is the firm's bank account. So the capital structure of the firm is a choice by the financial management team, and that choice is what percentage of capital should come from each of these different sources. Should it be 100% equity or 100% debt, or we don't want to do either one. We want to wholly own the firm, and we only want to operate the firm by using our savings account, right? Now, that is sort of, there's a lot of thought and effort that goes in by academics, by business people, into trying to understand what we would call the optimal capital structure. In other words, can we determine whether one source of capital is better or worse for the firm than another? And the answer, just the short answer, is we really don't think that we can. It seems to be the case that the optimal capital structure for a firm is specific to that firm. In other words, one firm might have benefit more from using lots of debt as their capital source, and other firms might not be able to handle that much debt because they may not have the cash flow, the level of cash flows that are needed to service all that debt, and service meaning pay it all off. Okay, so it doesn't seem like there's one unique optimum that we can say every firm should have 75% equity, 25% or 20% debt, and 5% from the savings account. That doesn't seem to be the case. And of course, when we look at firms, and even big famous firms, we see that as we would expect if that was the case, the capital structure of firms runs the gamut, right? You have companies like Google that for a long time didn't have any debt. They never wanted to be beholden to a loan. So they were basically 100% equity. And then you had firms that can handle a huge amount of debt. And we've even seen firms that have more debt than assets. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the next chapter. But there are certain firms, particularly firms that have really level, steady cash flows, that can handle a great deal of debt and still maintain a perfectly well-run firm. Okay. So the capital structure is really important, and it's a decision that's ongoing by the financial management team. Every year we're looking at the capital structure. We're raising money for new projects, for new investments. We're trying to decide what the appropriate source of capital is for the firm at that time. And these next two items here, the pecking order and the trade-off theory, these are some academic ideas, and I throughout the class I'll try to bring in some academic ideas. I'll try to bring in some colloquial examples, so some real-world examples None of that is stuff that I'm necessarily going to test you on or ask you about later. I just want to try to bring context to the idea so that as you're watching these lectures and as you're trying to learn about this concept, you have a lot of different viewpoints that can hopefully help you build a better picture in your mind of what's going on. Okay? So pecking order and trade-off theory, these are academic ideas that try to guide us into how we think firm decision-making should go. Right? So on the one hand, pecking order theory says that a firm should choose the cheapest source of financing available to it. Right? And that means that when a firm wants to raise new financing, new capital, they're going to look for what the cheapest source is first. Now, typically, if we just think about this in a very straightforward manner, like say from a personal perspective, the cheapest source of financing is the one you already have, and that's your retained earnings, that's your savings account. And then the next cheapest source of financing we tend to think is debt financing. So it's cheaper to get a loan. It's not free to get a loan. Obviously, there's a cost to raising debt, and that cost is called the interest on the debt. Right? So there's a cost. You got to pay interest to the bank or to whomever loans you the money. But that is typically cheaper than equity. And equity is then what we would say is typically the most expensive source of capital. And it's expensive for a couple of reasons. One is you are expected by your shareholders to share some of the profits of the firm with them. So you don't have an explicit cost like interest, but you are expected to pay dividends to your equity holders, and dividends are the share of the profit from the firm. So that's a cost. But there's a bigger cost, and it's not a monetary one necessarily. The bigger cost associated with equity is what we think of as loss of control. A firm that issues equity sells a piece of the ownership of the firm to someone else. And the more pieces of ownership you sell, the more owners, the more people in the room, the more decision makers there come to be. And that means that it becomes more difficult to operate the firm in the way that the management team or the original owners might have envisioned. Because once you start selling votes or selling stakes in the firm and give these people votes, then they may have different ideas about how the firm should be run rather than you.